Isaiah's great appeal embraces the most desirable human sustenance, bread, wine, rich food, but it begins with the offering of an essential. Everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. Jesus' gentle invitation at the Samaritan well proposes the same. Water that is dynamic and flowing and will never run out. The text says, if you knew the gift of God, you would have asked and he would have given you living water. Two beautiful texts this morning using one of the most powerful metaphors in the Bible, living water, the solitary source for spiritual renewal and restoration of life. Now, we are all aware of the necessity of water. Our bodies could not survive without it. As a matter of fact, the human body itself is about 50 to 65% water already in tissue, in your brain, in your blood, and in your bones, everywhere. It is said you can go without food for up to 40 days. You could last without water no longer than 3. And I kind of think that's a stretch. We would be nothing without water. And because the spiritual realm parallels the physical realm, as our bodies thirst, so too do our souls. The text says, everyone who drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Now, I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I remember in the summers, the humidity was so intense. It would be hot. It would be 99, 100 degrees. This was before we had air conditioning. I don't know what we did. But as soon as you stepped outside, you'd start to sweat. Now, back in the day when I was in Little Rock, the white ladies called it glowing. The black ladies called it sweat. Just depending on who you were and where you were. But you knew you needed water because you could literally see all the liquid leaving your body. Droplets of perspiration soaking your shirt, running down your forehead. You were from the South, Eva, right? Did you have this kind of, not quite?
Grew up, but not from.
Not from. So you didn't have this experience. You missed something, let me tell you. Don't even think about getting your hair done, because I'm telling you, by the time you got out to beauty shop, it would be all over. They call that going back or something, what your hair would do back, and that's all in the old days, old school. But you knew you needed water. You knew you needed it. But there are other parts of the country where it gets just as hot, but the humidity is low. And you may be in desperate need of water, but you don't know it. Your perspiration evaporates so quickly, you don't realize that you need water. Now, this can be a dangerous situation. As a matter of fact, in the Grand Canyon, there are signs strategically placed along the trails that remind you to stop and drink. You are thirsty whether you realize it or not. You could drop dead if you don't have enough water and don't know it. But how could it be that we don't recognize our own thirst? The prophet Isaiah's words are like the sign in the Grand Canyon. Stop and drink. You are thirsty whether you know it or not. And the power of those words, they're timeless. They were timeless for the people back in his day. They are right now words. They are words for the world. They are words for the church. Recognize your thirst. You are in need of spiritual water, whether you know it or not. Text says, why do you labor for that which does not satisfy? Come to the waters. You get the sense that Isaiah the prophet might be preaching in some kind of public marketplace. Nobody's really paying any attention to him. There's a lot going on around him. People are rushing here and there. Hawkers are standing there screaming for attention, trying to sell their wares. But Isaiah persists. Come to the waters so that you may live. Sadly, folks back then didn't listen much to preachers. Unfortunately, they still don't. Today, we are still bombarded in the public marketplace. The hawkers today are high-tech, and they're still screaming even louder, get this smartphone, get this iPad, get this iPod. You are nothing without a new car. You need a younger partner. You need a bigger house. Come on, you need a better body. This marketplace that Isaiah wrote about thousands of years ago is still out there, even more seductive today, demanding our attention, separating us from our money. I always talk about going to New York City, and where Nick is backing up in the Motown play, and he's at 46 off Broadway, and if you just go in that area, it is just teeming with people. Those who are selling stuff and those who are about to be taken. Those who are getting ready to rip you off and those who are the innocents. It is a marketplace. Come, buy all this junk. We live in a consumerist age. The world promises to satisfy us with material stuff. And because we are thirsty for something, no matter how strong we try to be, we fall for the scam every time. Now, we're not just consumers in this culture. We are over-the-top consumers. No matter what you make, no matter if you're poor, middle class, or upper class, you are usually spending more than you have. We are in a love affair with stuff. But here's the problem. Not only do we buy more stuff, we just keep on buying more stuff. We waste more stuff. We throw away more stuff at an alarming rate. We are a throwaway nation. Here's my word for the day: obsolescence. Obsolescence. One of the main forces driving these high levels of consumption and waste today is what they call obsolescence. It's the process of an item or technology being replaced, outdated, or falling out of use. Now, it can happen naturally that this thing just no longer is as good as it used to be. But in our culture, obsolescence is manipulated and manufactured by the marketplace. That's why you buy that smartphone on Friday, and by Friday night, that smartphone is obsolete. That's why you hold on to a smartphone, and then you have to get a new one, and you wonder why the charger doesn't work for the new one. They are creating a market that you have to keep going back to the marketplace. You think the technology, oh boy, these are really smart people. They are smart. They know how to separate you from your money. And they do that and make us upgrade the smartphone, the charger, the computer, the car. Now, the reason it's so important for us to understand this obsolescence is because, unfortunately, for too many of us, it spills over into our spiritual lives. It distracts us from that which is true, real, and eternal. If you look around, you see, we will throw away a preacher. We will throw away a member. We will even throw away a church. I went to this church and they just made me mad, and I just went to another one. We live in a throwaway culture, you see. Pope Francis pointed this out not long ago. He said we are one of the few cultures in the world, we throw away our babies. We live in a throwaway world. If it doesn't work, I'm out of here. I get mad at my husband, I'm gone. I get mad at my mama, I'm gone. We don't understand the concept of lasting. So we buy, and when we're not satisfied, which is often, throw it away, get something new. So there's Isaiah saying, wait a minute, you need something that's lasting. You'll be satisfied with this living water. This animated, energized spirit of a living God. You are thirsty, my child, and you don't even know it. We don't even know what we're thirsting for, so we just buy. That's what Jesus was saying to the woman at the well. Now, some people say, well, they met by chance at the well, but we know that when God is involved, there is nothing random. Jesus knows our needs a long time before we know them. And so here's Jesus going along, changing his course so that he would go through Samaria, runs into this woman at the well, asks her for a drink of water. And she says, well, you're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan, and you shouldn't even be talking to me. It's almost as if she senses something is about to happen. This is not just an ordinary conversation, and it's frightening. And Jesus says, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. You see, my girl at the well was a throwaway woman. She had been thrown away by her culture. She had done some things and made some mistakes. And you know, folks get uptight about that kind of stuff. And forgiveness is hard for people. And so they threw her away. And so now she's in this conversation with this stranger, and it's going on and on. And Jesus has gotten her attention. And sir, the woman replies, you have nothing to draw from, and the well is deep. The well is deep, the well is deep. And there it is, that's the problem. Jesus has asked her for water, offered her water, and she said, you can't give me any water, the well is too deep. But Jesus is now getting into her business. You know, when folks refuse to consider Jesus, sometimes it's not because they don't want to believe in Jesus, but they don't believe Jesus can help them. We think our well is too deep, my trouble is too big, my sins are too great. That's what's going on right out here on the street. There are people, they may peer at the churches, they may see the Christian folks going in, but they think they couldn't help me. I want to believe, but I don't think Jesus can reach into my stuff. I've got too much shame. I've got too big a past. And this resistance is not only in the street. This is the surprising part. Whether we care to admit it or not, this resistance is in the church. Now, I know it's not RPC, it's some other churches, but people say, you know what, I'm going to go to church every once in a while, and I'm going to tithe every once in a while, and maybe I'll sing some songs and give a little money, but that's as far as I'm going to go. Because I really don't want Jesus in my stuff, not my real stuff. I have some stuff up here on this level that I'll give you, Jesus, but not that deep down stuff. You can't take care of my stuff, Lord. You don't have the tools, and the well is too deep. You know, we think that Jesus can't handle all the stuff, so we put him in a box where we think he can do the most good. But we don't know the power of Jesus. Not even those of us here. We're scared to push it because we don't know. The well is too deep. Or perhaps we think we can handle it ourselves. You find a lot of that in the church today. You know, we just went to the book at the marketplace, and Oprah just wrote a new book, How to Pull Yourself Out of the Pit. So we buy that book, because I can get myself out better than Jesus can get me out. We think we are self-sufficient, even those of us in the church. Jesus says, if you knew the gift of God, you would have asked. Pride can hold us back and keep us from Jesus. Jesus says to the woman, now they're going on in this conversation, and all these things are rattling in her brain. He says to her, where's your husband? She says, I don't have a husband. Now that was not a lie, but it wasn't the truth. You see, we are so silly that we believe we can hide stuff from Jesus. I don't want to talk about it, so let me just hide it. But Jesus knew everything about this woman. He knew about the 5 former husbands, the man she was living with. Jesus knows all our sins and loves us still. What an amazing God we serve. He looks beyond our faults and sees our needs. Now, I know this so well because this is my testimony, you see. I was a woman caught between the marketplace and the well of my own shame. 27 years ago, I had money, I had fame, I bought stock in that marketplace. I wanted to see that marketplace grow. I was self-sufficient, did what I wanted to do. Men, oh my goodness, that was back in the day. You know, you see me now, I'm by myself. Let me tell you why. Oh my goodness, back in the day. My favorite kind of man, I'm not going to get too much into it, but my favorite kind of man, I called him trash with flash. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for trash with flash because I was self-sufficient. I didn't need God. What would I need God for? Until I got pregnant. And that's when I met Jesus. And Jesus said, look, if you knew the gift of God, you would have asked. Because whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. You see, we're out there thinking we're running for this stuff. We're trying to catch that stuff. And all we need is Jesus. That's all we need. So we stay in the marketplace. And the marketplace will rape us and it will tear us down. And then we end up at the well. This well's too deep, Jesus. You don't know what I've done. I didn't recognize my own thirst. But then I was at the basement of Concord Baptist Church, surrounded by the love. I believe it was the Women's Missionary Society. That was when I was pregnant on TV trying to hide from everybody. And that was when Jesus stepped into my life. And the Lord said, I have the water that you need. You will never thirst again. And that was the beginning of the journey, 27 years ago, the beginning. And maybe it even started even farther back. Maybe it was further back. I don't know. But what I'm saying is Jesus has the water that we need. We hide from Jesus, but Jesus knows us. But here's the part that I had to learn. You would have thought perhaps that was the end of my story, finding Jesus 26, 27 years ago. But that was just the beginning. Because you see, when Jesus gets you, there's a period of growth that he takes you through. So this moment of giving your heart to Jesus at the front of the church, that's not the end. That's just the beginning. You have to grow with Jesus. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we face. We don't want to grow. Or we don't think we can grow. Or we don't know we're supposed to grow. But whatever it is, whether you're churched or unchurched, you are seeking intimacy with Jesus. That's what the Lord wants. He wants intimacy from you. And that takes total surrender. That means Jesus is going to get into all your stuff. You have to decide whether that's what you want. And that becomes the problem. That's the challenge in church. You see, we think that we love to do church. We like to come to church. We like to be in the deacons. We love to be in the trustees. We want to be on all the boards. We want to sing in the choir. We love to have the banquets. I'm not talking about RPC. I'm talking about the other churches out in here. Black folks in particular love to do church. But what we have fallen short in is our intimacy with Jesus. We end up loving the church. We'll do anything for the church. But until you get to Jesus, you're missing a whole bunch of stuff. The church is just the base of the church is to get to know Jesus. Jesus said, abide in me, and I will abide in you. So when we give our lives to Christ, we have to learn how to grow in Christ. This deep, abiding, healing relationship with Jesus. And this, I promise you, Jesus never blocks us off. We stop. We stop because it's just too much. It's just too much. Oh, I got to give him this. I got to confess all this. I'll confess some stuff. But Lord, I don't know if I want to confess it all. It's a very basic process. But we forget all about it when we go to church. We miss it because we get so caught up in the busyness of church. But here's the problem. If we don't have an intimate relationship with Jesus, then we can't have intimate relationships with each other. We just miss it. If we don't know Jesus really well and the love that Jesus has for us, then we can't share that love with each other. So we start falling apart. And you see it in churches all the time. They fussing and fighting and having a brawl. And the people out in the streets that we're trying to get to come in, they say, well, why should I go in there and have a brawl? I can have a brawl out here. There's more room. How can we be what we're supposed to be if we don't learn how to love each other? And that's only through our growing in the spiritual journey with Jesus. We need to go back to the Bible. I'm just going, just basics 101. God created the world. The creation lost immediately. Right? As soon as he created it, Adam and Eve disobeyed, they fell. And from that moment on, God has worked to restore relationship with us. That's what God is doing. God is always reaching out to us. That's what he did to Adam and Eve. That's what he's done all the way down the line. That's what Isaiah was talking about in the square. Come for this water. That's what Jesus is doing at the well. Come to the living water. That's what God is doing right now. He wants you to have the living water so that you are satisfied. The Apostle Paul says, all of this from God who reconciled us to himself through Jesus and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. Yesterday at the retreat, somebody said, we have got to go out in the street and minister across the street and minister down the street, but we can't do that if we haven't been ministered to ourselves. We can't do that if we're not working on our own relationships. If we don't have a right relationship with Jesus, whom we don't see, how are we going to have a relationship with each other? You have to work on it. Spiritual growth is the continuation of your salvation. Paul said you have to work at your salvation. You are born again and again and again and again. And that's why I talk about discipline all the time. Because in order to grow, you have to have a pattern of growth. God's going to give you everything you need. It's in there. That's what the commercial used to say. It's in there, but you have to get to that. To be a disciple is to learn to grow. That's why we work at Bible study, fellowship, and prayer. We signed some covenants yesterday, just a kind of a promise to God that we're going to work harder on showing up at Bible study. We're going to work harder at fellowship. We're going to work harder at volunteering for different things. That's the basic of it. That's our discipline. We learn to grow. We grow by discipline. That's why you go to school. And I believe at the very base of the basics is prayer. It's prayer. That's the basics of the basics. You don't have to buy books. You don't have to go to small groups, though I think small groups are important. If you pray a lot more than you're praying now, you're at the basics of spiritual growth. You know, we dog the Muslims all the time. But the Muslims pray 5 times a day. Wherever they are, they will drop down on their knees and face Mecca and pray. And whether you believe it or not, Allah is God. There's only one God. They're praying to our God. Now, I don't know what they're saying. It's none of my business. But the least we can do is pray more. Prayer should be like the air we breathe. You see, I pray all the time now. And this is just my lesson through life. I used to not pray all the time, but I find that I need God more and more and more. And so I'm always reaching for God. I used to pray in my car, and you'd be driving past me and see me talking to myself, then I'd pick up my phone and act like I was talking on the phone. Because, you know, I didn't want to peek that I lost my mind. But now, I don't care if you see me or not. Because generally, I'm praying that you'll keep your car away from my car. I pray all the time. I'm not ashamed. And I suggest to you that prayer be like breathing. Prayer, not because you want something. Prayer because you want more of God. You know, this conversation at the well is very interesting. It's a story because I think it's my story I go back to. And if you didn't know this, this is the longest conversation that Jesus has in the New Testament. He talks on and on with this woman, and I've decided that this is some kind of prayer that's going on for this woman. That's why this conversation goes on, because anytime you encounter Jesus, you're talking about Jesus, talking about God. It's got to be prayer. We need to pray, church. We need to pray. Some folks say, well, I can't pray unless I know the house is on fire. Well, let me clue you in. The house is on fire. We need to pray for our community. We need to pray for our schools. We need to pray for our children. We need to pray for mama. We need to pray for daddy. We just need to pray. That's how you encounter God, through prayer. The more you pray, the more you find you need God. The more you need God, the closer you get to God. We need to pray. It's almost a mystical process. Once you pray, this intimacy grows. I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works. But that's how you learn who God is in your life. According to the prophet Jeremiah, God said, call to me and I will answer you and I will tell you the great and hidden things that you have not known. There's a mystical thing about prayer. So I want you to just make a promise as we talk about these disciplines. We're going to go into fasting April 10th for 10 days till Resurrection Sunday. We are going to pray. We are going to pray for the direction of this church. We are going to pray for each other. We're going to pray to get to know God. We're going to pray to grow. Pray with me, church. Pray with me. And it works. Prayer changes things. Prayer changes people. Prayer is amazing. When 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm with you. We will never lack for understanding. We will never be lonely. We will never lack for compassion. And then we will realize that once we are intimate with Jesus, we can be intimate with each other. We will learn to know each other at deeper levels without judgment, without fear, because we need each other. That's the whole symbol of the cross. We need God and we need each other. Pray, church. Pray. That is our thirst that we need, and we need the well that never runs dry.